Made possible through support from ARC Thrift Stores, Colorado Developmental Disabilities Council, Developmental Pathways, and the ARC of Aurora. A THINK+change training. Hey there, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode within our THINK+change podcast and vodcast series, talking about really sensitive issues that are really impacting people with developmental disabilities. We're doing an entire multi-part series on substance abuse, people with IDD, and really those systemic gaps. I'm your host, Erika Dennison, here with THINK+change, which is a program of the ARC of Aurora. We're a nonprofit organization here in Aurora, Colorado that advocates for and on behalf of children and adults with developmental disabilities and their families. So today's episode, I'm joined by another excellent special guest from our local community, where we are really going to be diving into a topic about prevalence of substance abuse among people with developmental disabilities. So before we dive in, I would love for you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and any wonderful things about yourself that you'd like to share.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Erika Spraker.
Great name.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Erika Land.
Yeah. I work for a mental health agency called Lifelong Inc. We provide services for people with intellectual, developmental, cognitive disabilities, traumatic and acquired brain injuries, autism spectrum, kind of that difficult to serve population. And I totally put that in air quotes because it's lifelong. We really refer to it more as like non-traditional learning. So we kind of like see a need, fill a need. And we provide a lot of services for clients who kind of come in from child protection, as well as maybe some criminal domestic violence cases. So we do things from life skills, mentorship, family time, individual therapy, group therapy, parent coaching. We also do domestic violence services. We do evaluations and assessments, and then we do substance use.
Okay.
So we have relapse prevention groups, DUI, individual therapy for substance use. So kind of one-stop shop.
You guys do a lot and wear many hats.
We do.
I super appreciate the work that you guys do when it comes to serving not only those with developmental disabilities, but those with just more so like unique nuances that go along with having blended identities, right? I mean, it's complicated. And so knowing that there's an agency out there that can help them navigate those interesting things within our lives is really great to know. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dive in kind of understanding kind of the prevalence of people with developmental disabilities when it comes to substance abuse. And as we were kind of navigating and putting together this series and questions, we really wanted to dive in and figure out, what are the statistics and data out there? And truth be told, there's not a lot out there.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to just share with whoever may be tuning in just a couple of tidbits to kind of take away as we're talking about people with developmental and other disabilities. And so a couple of statistics. This is from the Addiction Center, which is a national information hub when it comes to these types of topics that we're talking about today. One of the statistics is people with physical disabilities experience substance abuse disorders, or you may hear us call it SUD for acronym land, right? It's filled with acronym land out here in the disability world. At 2 to 4 times the rate of the general population. Another statistic in the United States, 54 million people experience some form of disability. Of that number, roughly 9%, or a total of 4.7 million adults, have both SUD and a co-occurring disability. And then another one, when we're specifically talking about developmental disabilities, intellectual disability is a type of developmental disability. Those with intellectual disabilities in particular suffer from staggering rates of addiction. Anywhere from 7% to 26% of individuals with intellectual disabilities have addiction-related issues, depending on the exact condition. So interesting data that we certainly came by, but like I said, it was really hard to find this data. And so I was curious on what are your thoughts on addressing that?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, loaded question.
It is. No, there's a lot to that. I think that it is definitely a lack of research and empirical evidence for our providers. What we know is the disability population is an oppressed population, and oppressed people have oppressed voices. So things like your podcast and ARC is a really great way to kind of get the word out there.
Sure.
And encouraging some of those emerging professionals to take a look at the disability community, because the rates are high. And I know that the CDC says 1 in 4 people in the nation have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about that and the substance use rates, you know, it kind of puts things into a little bit of a perspective.
It certainly does.
That lack of research.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's when I was looking for the data, I found myself actually becoming frustrated, because I just remember thinking, like, why is there not more out there?
Absolutely.
Because it is such a prevalence. I mean, if it wasn't an issue, you would not do the important work that you're doing.
Yeah. I remember in school, I was writing my thesis actually on substance use groups and differentiating between genders and what those coping skills look like. And then I really wanted to try to find information on how to work with the ID community and doing groups, you know, just with men and just with women. And you really have to find a balance between non-traditional learners and traditional learners, and making sure that there is that balance within groups. Mm-hmm. But there was no research on what do you do and how do you tailor information? So it's tough.
An ongoing process for change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your feedback with that. Thank you. Why do you think substance abuse is so prevalent among people with disabilities, and how can we address those challenges?
Yeah, I think that there are a few things that really play the part. There's system challenges. It is more easily accessed in the disability population. It's more a part of the community right now, and we know that there is a drug problem in the United States. And it can be a way to cope with underlying illnesses, pain, history of trauma. There's also a lack of resources and treatment that's really tailored to this community and non-traditional learners. Yeah. We can look at static risks. So there's, you know, limited problem solving, desire to please and maybe hide their disability from others, and maybe a lack of understanding and wanting to fit in. We can look at dynamic risks, so communication variables, so like self-worth and self-esteem. Maybe it's a worry of self-isolation, so they join communities that maybe are more undesirable communities. Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely a few things that contribute to why the rates are so high.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's so many factors, as with any of us, right? I mean, all the factors you say are quite probably aligned with someone who does not have a disability also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your feedback with that question. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So as you know, within your work, substance abuse can be many different things. I mean, it could be drugs, alcohol, over-the-counter drugs. But something that really actually worries our organization is an organization that advocates for and on behalf of people with developmental disabilities is they may take prescribed medications with very little input in the decision-making process. And so we know that not all psych meds have addictive, elements or properties within them, but there are some that do. There's, Xanax, Ativan, which is also lorazepam, Valium, which is diazepam, and then Klonopin, which is another psych med. There's also opioids, so oxycodone or hydrocodone. Many of us refer to it generally as Vicodin, I would say. Yep. Or there's stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin, or there's even sleep aids. And so what are your thoughts on the importance of thoughtfully recommending and observing prescriptions for people with developmental and other disabilities to prevent over-medication? And then how can we ensure that it's only necessary medication and it's not out of convenience for the person that's maybe taking care of that person?
Yeah. So two-part question.
Another loaded question. Here we go.
So first, I definitely think it's a very real worry. And I think it's a not just a worry for the disability community, but a worry for the whole community. If I walk into the doctor's office and I tell my doctor I'm having anxiety or pain, I'm going to trust that she's going to prescribe me what I need. And that helps with, the right therapeutic dosage, the correct therapeutic dosage required for my symptoms and my ailments. And she may say things like, make sure you take it the same time every day, and this is what you're going to take. I know that I maybe have the skills to ask follow-up questions. How is this going to impact me? What are my side effects? Or say, this isn't working.
Sure.
But then when we throw the ID population into this environment or the equation, they may not necessarily have the skills to say, I don't know what this is, or maybe give a lot of yes answers because that's what the doctor wants to hear. When we think of doctors and police officers, we kind of get nervous, right? And we think that, okay, they know, they have all of the answers. So I think there's, definitely a few things with increased follow-up assessments, and allowing our providers to do things like skills training, teaching refusal skills, teaching about the impact on their dosage, the medication management part, what to do, how it's supposed to affect your system, just providing a little bit more education as a whole when prescribing medication, I think is going to help with the decision-making process, an informed process on saying, okay, this does work for me, or no, it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I certainly could see how there could be, like, is it okay that I ask questions about this? Is it okay that I use my voice? And absolutely it is, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so important that people with developmental and other disabilities feel empowered to share, this doesn't make me feel good, or to ask those questions, or share with people if they want to try something different. And so, there have been so many times I have seen folks in, past work I've done that I really felt, I'm not a doctor, but I felt like they weren't even there. It's like they were so overly medicated. It was just like a cloud, it just felt clouded, and they weren't the same person that I remember them being.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the questions that we ask at Lifelong during our intake, and I'm sure, other providers do as well, but is, are you on any medication? Why are you taking that medication? What is your dose of that medication? And oftentimes it's, no, I'm not on anything, or I don't know, or I'm taking this medicine, but I'm not really sure why. I think it's because of my anxiety, or maybe it's because of my sleep problems, or it's just, nope, I'm not on anything.
Yeah.
And then we ask follow-up questions, and it's just, oh, wait, you are taking this. Oh, yes. My doctor gave me that a couple months ago. And so there is like this lack of understanding and follow-up from providers.
Yeah. Well, it just leads me to, like, we always say here that training and education is the least intrusive form of advocacy. And so it's really giving them their own voice to be their own best advocate, and ask those questions and give them the training and education they need when it's, well, it's like, I get a medication, I'll be honest, right? And it's this crazy teeny weeny fine print, like, here's all your symptoms you may expect to get, or side effects. And like, that's not user friendly in general for just anyone, in my opinion. So, I mean, even just making things in plain language for someone who has a developmental disability, or if they are unable to read, explaining it to them, giving them the accommodations they need to better understand what they're putting in their bodies. So I appreciate what you shared with that.
No, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. When we do think about non-traditional learners and maybe like a 6th grade reading level, and they're handed this packet of all of these side effects, and maybe there's a comprehension piece, that's lacking a little bit, and they read, oh my gosh, you're going to go through all of these things. That can feel daunting.
Very
a little
daunting.
Scary.
Very daunting. It's a lot. My next question for you is, many people with developmental disabilities have generally, like, maybe a team of people or a circle of supports in their life, or maybe they have a caregiver, whether that's natural support or paid. And a lot of times people will just refer to them as like their circle of supports, or the people in their lives, or their staff, or however they may identify with those people. What are some of the early warning signs of drug abuse that those people in the lives of people with developmental disabilities should be aware of?
Yeah, again, think it's more of a community question too, just because it takes a village and there's so many people around us, whether it's work, family, friends, community partners that, the ID population is working with that can look for those things. I think that the signs can range from things like job performance, poor impulse control, increased isolation, sudden cognitive decline. So struggling to pay attention, or maybe a change in those sleep patterns, even hanging around people in places like that isolation piece, that, worry about self-isolation piece. People in places that they normally wouldn't hang around, and withdrawing from friends and family. So I definitely think it's a community effort, right, to make sure that our family and friends are making safe and healthy choices. I also think it's about not ostracizing and inviting people in, even if there are those differences. It's staying connected and offering support.
Yeah. I think we all do better when we have a community backing
Absolutely.
us, right? I mean, any of us do. So
Absolutely.
That's really great advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Those are all the formal questions that I have for you as we kind of wrap things up. Do you have any final thoughts or last minute things that you want to share that are just on the forefront of your mind before we kind of wrap it up?
Oh gosh, so many. I feel like I can always stand on my soapbox.
I mean, you do your soapbox thing. It's good. We have time.
No. I really appreciate you inviting me in to be able to talk about all of those things. These are definitely things that I'm passionate about. I have a team behind me at Lifelong that we're all passionate about. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I appreciate your valuable time today. Always fun being joined by another Erika for our podcast and podcasts. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in our next episode as part of this multi-part series, and you don't want to miss that. But in the meantime, stay curious, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.